Well, I hope you're enjoying your week already. On this Monday, I've had a great start to my week. I've already had a couple of meetings this morning that have been really encouraging to me. In fact, I've been listening to some testimonies from church members and also from some friends of mine in other churches about how God's at work in their lives and how, interestingly enough, they are learning better how to trust God. And that's really what this journey is all about during these 8 weeks that we're focusing on this spiritual growth area that we call trust. If you were at church Sunday, you're aware of the fact that we talked about Abraham and that Abraham is the father for us in faith. And we know that Jews, Muslims, Christians all look at this one man as a central figure in the story of redemptive history, and that is indeed who Abraham was. What's interesting about Abraham is that he appears on the scene somewhat in a nondescript way. And he's just a man who is living in Haran, and he's married to a woman who's barren. And as we read the story Sunday, God intervened in his life, intercepted him at a particular moment in time, and his whole life changed. And what was required out of Abraham was trust. And he made the decision to say yes to God in his everyday life. As I've said to you before, I think sometimes we think these biblical characters glow in the dark. You know, they're just different than us, and they had some kind of magic dust maybe that just settled on them so that they could do all these wonderful things for God. And that's just not the truth. Abraham was just a man, a human being. He was living his life some 2,000 years before Christ in an ancient world. He was surrounded by polytheists and all kinds of pagan rituals and worship practices that were being lived out in the lives of the people that he lived among. But somehow he found his way to follow the God of the universe. And he then had to take that desire to follow God and put it into practice every day in his life. And that's one of the beauties of this story. And as I shared with you Sunday morning, he has become an inspiration. His life and just all the things that happened to him, it's become fertile ground for theologians and for the writers of the New Testament even. So this week I'm going to be asking you to do some reading in the New Testament and listen to the voices of these New Testament authors as they look back on the story of Abraham and reinterpret that story or help us to have some theological footing based upon the events in Abraham and Sarah's life. And the application is that we will learn to trust God the way Abraham and Sarah trusted God. So I'm praying for you this week, praying that you'll hear the voice of God in your own life, but also that you'll respond in faith. That's one of the things that's really hard to do. At the conclusion of our worship service Sunday morning, we sang that wonderful hymn, "Wherever He Leads, I'll Go." In a couple of the services, it just struck me, as I said to many of you, you know, it's much easier to sing that hymn. It's much easier just to say those words than it is to actually live that out in our lives. So I'm praying for you specifically this week that wherever He leads, you'll go.